digitaljamsessions.com.
Hi everyone, welcome to Digital Jam Sessions. Once again, this is Mookie Gullen, who's been deputy hosting. Why am I talking about myself in third person? Hi, I've been deputy hosting for the lovely founder of Digital Jam Sessions, Tanya Laird. And this is a very, very special year-end episode to round off 2018, to give a best of tech review, kind of breakthrough tech and everything else in between. And my special guest today, which I shouldn't even say is the guest, because she's none other than the founder of Digital Jam Sessions. Round of applause for Tanya Laird. Tanya, how are you doing?
I am good. It's nice to be back.
Good. It's so good to see your lovely face and hear your lovely voice. And I'm sure the listeners will be very, very excited too. So without further ado, let's cut to the chase.
2018.
Get in the nitty gritty. So the year 2018 has had so much going on in it, in our worlds of tech and media, entertainment, esports, everything else in between. And what I think the number one, the biggest breakthrough of 2018 for me, I think, has been curiosity. More people have been asking and wanting to learn and wanting to really understand, oh gosh, there are new things happening. How do we do it? How do we apply it? Is that a different types of back-end development, hardware, software, storytelling formats, things like that. Okay. So for me, it's been really interesting to see like a little shift, not a paradigm type of shift, but I think an attitude shift. And an attitude in people's shifts in the way people will now reconsider, hey, we do need a little bit of budget for development and try these types of new tech. So without further ado, let's dip into the types of tech that we were kind of chatting about before we started recording and things that we've seen change in our worlds. And we've broken this down into a couple different categories. And listeners, I know you're still listening. There could be a chance that this could be broken up into two parts. So
because we're going to babble.
Because we will babble, bigger than a babblefish. We have a lot to cover. So, but just to keep these kind of tight at around 20-minute podcasts, we'll kind of get as much as we can now and then regroup in a few weeks' time. So thanks for your patience. Bear with us, and off we go. So Tanya, starting with I think some of the things we were talking about, like always on tech, cloud tech, smart tech, esports tech, entertainment, ed tech, med tech, ethical tech. Where should we start with that? Like there's so much tech.
So many places to start with that. Personally, I am quite interested in the kind of the always on aspect of AI and where we're going with that, because I think there's been a lot of discussion around this, especially with Amazon and Google Home becoming kind of more accepted in people's lives now, enough so that we've got just news stories where people are talking about kids are growing up learning how to be rude because they're demanding things from their Amazon Echoes and their Google Homes. And
not just for Christmas anymore.
They don't know how to say please and thank you anymore because they're just demanding things from a computer. So if it's becoming that commonplace that people are covering those kind of stories, I think it alludes to more of an acceptance in people's homes and people's lives if they feel that something is safe around their kids and they're willing to let their kids be told bedtime stories by the computer, that there is a shift in how people are allowing that always-on technology to be in their homes and in their lives.
So that might fit into that curiosity element where it's becoming more norm. It's becoming, again, not just for Christmas anymore. A smart speaker is becoming that assistant. Is becoming, are people relying on?
I think it's interesting though, because there is only a certain kind of category of things that people will use this technology for. And so there's still a kind of a nervousness around how much people are willing to ask for help from these AIs. And so, for example, with Amazon Echo, with Alexa, I think the most common things are asking for a reminder or checking what the time is. And
timers, weather.
That kind of really basic stuff.
I'm waiting for my Alexa to integrate my time train tables because that extra 15 seconds me looking on the train line, I need back from my
But it's those kind of very basic, simplistic commands of tell me what time it is right now or tell me what the weather's going to be, that people are still very reluctant to trust in an AI to do something complex. And that's where it gets interesting, I think, is when are people going to open up to the idea of allowing it to actually manage a complex task for them?
Well, I suppose it's up to the developers to create skills that can be making more complex things. Because at the moment, I think an average person still finds Alexas and smart speakers as a novelty. Like, hey, what's the weather? Oh, look at this. Or, who is Tanya Laird? Who is maybe, and just kind of playing around with it. And also what I've found, like I went to a friend's, a neighbor had bit of a birthday party house gathering the other week. The kids were still up quite late, and everyone's kind of like dancing in the front room, disco style or whatever. I don't know. And they didn't have, no one was doing Spotify. There wasn't a DJ. There wasn't just like a record playing or a radio on. It was Alexa through a speaker going, Alexa, play Daft Punk. Alexa, play da-da-da. And like everyone was getting involved. So everyone was the DJ.
Yeah.
So this is where the always on, it's almost, we can rename this category as everyone's on.
But also a part of that, and the reason why people are so open to this now is because it's been made so seamless, because it's voice control and it's the voice command, and it's no longer this, I need to read a huge manual to understand how to work this piece of technology. You know, it's just become I ask a question and something magically happens.
Yeah.
And I think that's opened the door for a lot of people who wouldn't have otherwise necessarily got involved with the tech.
No. And I think I was at Future Book Conference recently. Very well done, by the way. Thank you, booksellers, for the invitation. And what they were finding is like that integration of tech into education. So EdTech was a big topic for them. But it was also like, you know, children that might not be at proper speaking level yet. You know, Alexis is not turning on and doing what they're saying because they can't sentences aren't structured yet, right? So I think the category we're kind of molding into life tech.
Yeah.
So the always on tech, I think, will blend into that and now come under the life tech. So what else was coming up for you this year? I've got like a list of about 15 things here. but speakers and that kind of voice activation came under our life tech list. But for me, I did see, obviously, there's been a rise in podcasts the last 5 years or so. Thank you, listeners, for keeping us going. But also streaming services, OTT in the broadcast space, you know, the inkling that 5G is coming soon. I think we're at 4.6.7.
Not quite 5 yet.
We are so nearly there. Social VR. With all this comes under fake news. I mean, life tech. What has been life tech for you?
Well, I just want to jump back for a moment to streaming, because I think this is actually an interesting point, which is that we've, certainly this year, I feel it has become a thing now, is that we're now seeing the prevalence of major streaming networks actually commissioning original content. Whether it's Amazon or Netflix, they're now in the same sandpit as the studios. They are commissioning that content.
Now YouTube even.
Yeah, and YouTube even is in that game as well now. No, they're commissioning original content, they're commissioning original programming, and they're able to leverage data that the big studios, much as they've got all their tracking and they've got, you know, all that other stuff that they do, it's not the same quality of data that somebody like Netflix has when it comes to insights about what the audience is going to watch, how long they're going to watch it, where they're going to watch it from, what device they're going to watch it on, all these kind of bits of information that, you know, whether it's Amazon or Netflix, they have access to that data. And they can use that.
It's giving catch-up TV a whole new name. I think that's a great little... I mean, if you're thinking about our friends at the BBC and Channel 4 and ITV and everywhere, you know, the players that they've developed have been around for a while. But I think what's being integrated is that same type of... that clever programming, but also the personalization of it.
Yes.
So you're not trying to, you know... Are the days still there when you just turn on your TV or your smart TV or anything else and you don't know what to watch? What should I watch? That is gone because now what's coming up are the algorithms and things that you know, like this, try this.
I find it interesting.
So that kind of like exploring of what is out there. That, you know, there's no TV guide anymore. You have to like Google maybe top 100 films to watch. You know, before the year is up.
Well, I find this really interesting because we've seen very recently with AI now, you know, AI creating poems or creating, you know, art or music, you know, and I think it's interesting that we are getting to that point where, you know, people are going to start seeing AI influencing the outcomes of what they're consuming. Because it's tailored, it's personal to you, and it is, you know, essentially it is AI driven. Well,
actually, we might be morphing over into entertainment at the minute because I did do one of some of the bit of R&D that I've done recently. There was an artist that actually made an entire album with AI. I'm going to remember her name in a second. So. But right, so from life tech, I think morphs very neatly into ethical tech.
Oh yeah, let's talk.
And because this is the year, 2018 has been the year of everyone sitting up and taking notice of privacy issues. It's 2018 has been the year of GDPR. It's been the year of heightened knowledge of what is fake news and what isn't, and those types of personalization versus the algorithms versus and people actually tech for bad. So the type of ethical tech versus smart tech almost, and half like morphing into it.
But
within the ethical tech, is some of that kind of realization of how to best use AI. You know, are those dueling ethical? You know, like what is people's comforts? How does the younger generation find their way when they really don't give a flying hoo-ha? It's all about must-have now, and how that affects everything from medicine, like genetic, future training, things like this.
Well, because we've got to a stage where, for example, one of the things that MIT mentioned is the creation of embryos using stem cells.
Yeah.
So rather than having to use sperm or eggs, or actually having to use reproductive parts from people, they're able to create it from a pure stem cell, which means that you don't even need reproduction or organs from somebody to create another human being or to create life. And so the interesting question kind of becomes, okay, at what point do we draw a line in the sand and say what's ethically right or wrong about creating new life, and who is it that says it's okay for a lab technician to be the one to decide this?
Right. Can you imagine being that person? Hello, I've just invented a human.
And, you become a parent to a child that you just created as such. And it's interesting, though, to understand that, I've said this before at lots of conferences, and I'm going to keep on banging on about this, which is, when we're entrepreneurs, when we're, at the front edge of technology, it's kind of like being a superhero. It's like being Spider-Man, because with great power comes great responsibility. And the decisions that we make in these industries, we're making decisions that won't impact the general public, the mainstream, for maybe 5 or 10 years down the line. But by the time it impacts them, they have no choice in the matter. We've already decided how this stuff works. They just got to suck it up and live with it. And it is that question of, who is checking with people in our industries, in these startups, is this the right way to be doing this? Is this necessarily the best for the mainstream public, or is this best for you?
So what we think is happening is that there are civil service type of governmental policies that are starting to be in place in several countries around the world. We won't even go to China yet. America, China, Germany, places, the UK, even. There's places that are actually going, hang on a second, maybe we do need to keep our eye on these types of, experiments happening, or these types of companies that are using this type of tech. Is that ethical? Is that right?
But even understanding what is the exposure here, what is the risk? Because, let's look at the Facebook situation and scenario. There were obvious risks involved with the way that they shared certain data. But whether or not the government understands what those risks are and can put legislation in place to protect the public is a whole other matter.
But I suppose that's where GDPR kicks in.
Yeah.
This is GDPR is the first step towards some type of regulation.
But even that is years late.
Regulation.
GDPR is years late.
But at least it's happened now, right?
Yeah, it should have happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
But again, it just shows that differentiation between where the government is in terms of protecting the public versus where the actual industry is are two very different places. And I think that there does need to be more of a bridge built between those two to make sure that we are safeguarding.
Right.
Because there are people who are toying with technology, toying with, new and emerging technology that really is going to have significant impact on the future of how people live their everyday lives.
Right. And what has been that for you in 2018?
Well, for me, it's China. The experimentation that we're seeing in China. People were like, "Oh, it's Black Mirror," come to life. It's like, it's totally Black Mirror come to life, in as much as we are now seeing the restriction of movement. We're seeing the restriction of communication. We're seeing the restriction of people's everyday lives being impacted by how they do or do not interact with their social media economy, or that's essentially
which is morphing us into smart tech.
Yeah.
And where these smart cities come in. So I know, thank you listeners for bearing with us. Our brains are melting. But these types of smart city and the sensor cities, where the sensors and the analytics, where there are places like Toronto who have the tech for good in mind and what they want to be doing it with.
Toronto is a great example.
Urban redevelopment, things like that. And then in parallel, you've got some cities and other places in the world where they are naming and shaming and busting people and reprimanding them and restricting their movements
and withdrawing services from them, withdrawing their ability to take money out of the bank or go on a train or all these very basic things. the thing is that, you know, we look at somewhere like Toronto and the Waterfront Project, and people will be like, this is great, you know, this is for good, this is going to improve people's lives. But at the same time, there's still that risk that somebody somewhere, a commercial entity, is going to say, oh, we've got access to all this data now. We know where you're moving, we know where you're going, we know where you're eating, we know all of this stuff about you because we're helping to facilitate your life. Let's monetize that, or let's do something that exploits or takes advantage of that data. Who is going to make sure that somebody is protecting the mainstream public from that kind of commercial exploitation?
I'm going to throw a big name bomb out there, and that's Martha Lane Fox.
Yeah.
And so her company, which is called Everyone, DOTEveryone.org.uk, is, you know, the pure mission statement on their business. They champion responsible technology for a fairer future.
Yes.
Everything is thinking down the road because it's going to take action now to make a difference down the line.
Exactly.
And it's creating those types of policies and those types of regulation and making an impact on maybe people like our friends in the government who might be too slow and red tape and things like that. So it's kind of starting local, acting global, in the same way like how we started the recycling revolution. Who knows? It's
kind of like self-regulation. You know, you start with somebody within the industry who wants to take that step, and, you know, kudos to Martha Lane Fox and you know, it's very important that we have these types of organisations who are out there looking out for the rest of us.
And as far as smart tech, what else has caught your eye this year as far as like cool smart tech? Because obviously we know there's rise of the smart TV and smart this, and oh my God, there's an app I can now like turn on my oven and close down my blinds and things like that. But technically, that's not a breakthrough for 2018. That tech has been going a very long time because I know the CEOs in these kind of companies that have been doing it for 10 years.
It's not exactly new
it's
tech.
Just the phones and gadgets gets cooler and faster, and the apps get a little bit.
I'm not going to say that I think it's a cool thing, but I think it's an interesting thing, and that is smart cars. And seeing
smart cars. I've seen
what's been happening with smart cars. I mean, here in London, in Greenwich, there was a trial with self-driving cars. You know, and in San Francisco, it's quite normal to see self-driving cars, but at the same time, we've heard negative press. You know, with Tesla and Tesla rather, and you know,
the Uber
and you know, various very unfortunate situations. But again, you know, I think it's interesting that people are becoming more and more acceptant of the idea of self-driving cars, and I'm looking forward to when this eventually happens, because anybody who's been listening to the show for a while, you all know by now, I refuse to learn how to drive.
Right, there's some throwback episodes about it.
I refuse to learn how to drive because I genuinely believe that within my lifetime there will be a driverless, you know, economy system where I will never need to learn how to drive. I will never have to physically drive a car because there will be self-driving cars available to me whenever I need them. And so I absolutely
you don't have to be in the driver's seat.
I absolutely refuse to learn how to drive because I genuinely believe we are within reaching distance of that kind of tech. So, you know, for me, I think that we're now beginning to see that become more accepted. People beginning to get comfortable with that notion, that idea. You know, earlier on, maybe, you know, last year or the year before, people were all like, oh, you know, the ethics of it. What if there's going to be a crash and the computer decides that it's going to like sacrifice that person in exchange for that person?
Well,
all those kind of conversations.
Unfortunately, there was a crash.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately, somebody lost their life from it.
Yeah.
And that was part of their R&D and part of their testing and beta and prototype testing. And in like a really awful way, a lot of, you know, the different revolutions and the different revolutions have been happening for hundreds of years. There's these risks with everything.
Every new technology has had
risks. And then you learn from that and try to make an improvement.
Yeah.
And I really wish nobody lost their life from any of these experiments over the last thousands of years and hundreds of years.
Well, airplanes is a great example of this. You know, the evolution of airplanes, there's been many deaths along the way. You know?
Yeah, and well, in space. Let's look at space and like shuttles and
speedboats, whatever you want to look at. You know, there's always been incidents with
space tech might be the next episode because I have like a whole list of that.
Mars.
Yeah, and I think you can't have a smart city and a smart tech without cloud.
Yes. And I think it's getting interesting because 5G will obviously make a huge difference with all of this.
4.75,
but the whole kind of, I don't know.
The cloud.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, for those who don't know, I'm on chemotherapy, and I literally
forgive you.
You've just literally witnessed what chemo brain looks like when you literally forget what you were talking about.
I wasn't looking at you right at that very second, so I didn't realize you're having a brain fart. Chemo brain fart.
Okay.
So
But
let's start again.
no,
So,
but
yes,
I know where I am now.
let's keep
Sorry,
going
sorry.
now. Cities, cloud.
But 5G is going to obviously significantly impact on
It
the
will change all of
capability
our lives
and the
completely.
capacity for cloud, because
Mhm.
it's all about speed. It's all about capacity and bandwidth. And with cloud, I think the other interesting thing as well is that I don't think people yet have fully understood the full capability of what cloud can really do for us in terms of how much we can draw down from the cloud, what kinds of things we can draw down from the cloud, what kind of things it can support and facilitate. People haven't really given that as much thought. And when I say people, I mean mainstream consuming public haven't really got an idea or an understanding of just what this is capable of.
Yeah.
But when we talk about things like blockchain, for example, blockchain very much relies on cloud capabilities. Well, majority of it does. And so, you know, when you look at the scope,
decentralization is
if you
the
look
cloud
at
separate the centralization.
Exactly. If you look at the scope and the capabilities that are available, if you have just that little bit more bandwidth, just that little bit more speed, cloud suddenly becomes something very, very different.
But it's also, I think, an average person, again, this is where I've seen 2018 and like a little bit dripping over from last year, where an average person that does not work in the tech space and doesn't babble about and geek out like we do, notices the cloud. They have noticed the cloud this year. Let me do that in past tense. Because I'll say, I call it my mom test. And, you know, if I create something, I'm producing something, I like kind of give her as like a little mini focus group. She might not be my 18 to 24 demo that I might be making this for, 18 to 34, sometimes 44 or 54. But if she gets it and understands it, then that's like a little bit of a litmus test for me, or like a little bit of a peek. But what I say, an average person will notice, hang on a second, I have my tablet out, and it doesn't have the same information it did on my phone like it did yesterday. What's wrong now? So that's about connectivity. That is about those are still smart life and life tech. So really, I guess everything we're talking about, maybe 2018 is the year of life tech and everything that comes into that. But you know, the life-changing tech that comes with that. But an average person now knows, why isn't my cloud backed up? Oh my God, what am I going to do? That's almost as bad as running out of battery, or not making an Instagram,
or not having enough storage to be able to do things.
Not having enough storage, and now like, okay, XYZ tech company wants to charge me £2.50 a month. Yeah, okay, I'll do that. Until you see the year end of your bills, and you have like 10 different cloud services charging you 30, 40 quid a year. But being connected, this type of life tech, more so into our last topic, which is, well, we still need to cover like ed tech and a little bit of esports and entertainment, but I think should we save that for next time? But also med tech, which we're going to save for next time. I think with life tech comes the educational tech. So should we round out a little bit, touching on the kind of things that we found in 2018 for educational tech? For me, I saw the rise of more integrated VR and AR in the books and the publishing world. Love what like things like Octagon Studios are doing with their kind of flashcards and the memory cards.
Yes, that's nice.
Manox with their linguistics app, linguistics VR experiences, book teaching children how to read in these type of book formats. Again, in my music industry space, like telling these stories through different types of technology. So tell me about your ed tech of the year.
Well, I'm going to throw a spanner.
I know what it is.
Well, I'm going to throw a spanner in the works very briefly and talk very, very briefly about the fact that I think that actually avatars is a really interesting thing, in as much as I think people are going to start to become more and more aware of the fact that they need some kind of digital identity, and that digital identity needs to be unified across all of this. We're talking about life tech and ed tech and, you know, gaming and entertainment.
The next one for part 2, I think.
But I think that's becoming something that people are becoming more and more aware of, is this need for digital identity, and I think digital identity is something we definitely need to talk about.
So at some point. That's still life tech, though. Digital identity, because that is your life, and it's all becoming digitized, and the things that you do with it is becoming connected through cloud, through AI, through these smart applications. 5G will change all of that. But until next time.
But we'll talk about that next time.
We will talk about that next time.
Specifically EdTech, and I know what you want me to talk about. Let's talk about the Babblefish earphones.
Okay, tell me about those real quick.
Which is basically real-time translation earbuds, essentially.
And they're super cool.
And they are super cool because I physically have a pair.
And those launched this year, 2018.
They did, as far as I'm aware. It was this year. I don't think it was last year. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was this year.
Okay.
But basically, I actually bought some of these and I tested them out when I went to Amsterdam on the Eurostar. So like,
Was that for IBC?
yeah, for
Yes.
IBC.
Okay. Yes.
So when we were on the Eurostar, I had these things in my ears, and
Yes.
we were testing it and listening to people speaking in another language and hearing this weird translation in real time in my ear was quite an interesting thing. I felt very Star Trek in that moment.
And you appeared in a red uniform with little arrows all over you.
I feel like we are getting to this really interesting point where technology is really able to facilitate us in ways that, it was sci-fi back in the day.
I'm going to put that under life tech again, because that helped you carry on with your life, especially in the current situation, which you faced so bravely this year with your chemo and cancer diagnosis and trying to get on with things and how you live now and everything. So it's good to see this type of tech keeping people moving in the right direction and living their lives.
Absolutely.
Now. So we're going to put a wrap on this one, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you
so much for listening. And Tanya there, everybody! Let's do the traditional, because you taught me so well now. Where can people find you? And what else can you do shameless plugs for, but not so shameless plugs?
So if you enjoy this content, don't forget to subscribe and review. You can follow us on Twitter at Digital Jam Ltd. You can find all of our other Digital Jam sessions via our Twitter handle.
All reliable sources.
And we also have the How I Live Now show.
Yes.
So if you want to check that out, that talks all about my cancer and chemotherapy, because we didn't want to put that depressing stuff in the Digital Jam sessions. It's in its own little home. And we talk all about...
which is tech for good, because you're also helping people understand, like you're helping other people
about
with cancer
learning.
Understand and being open about it.
Yeah.
And it's not a stigma, and it's not anything...
I am not my diagnosis.
Yes, that's it. So, and we're going to touch on that extent, because we, fingers crossed, have a very, very special guest in the next Digital Jam session. I'm very excited to interview him. So, and as always, you can find me at Muki Approved, MUKI Approved, on all social media. And thank you so much again. That was part one of your review of Tech and Review 2018.
Is it 2018? I thought it was in 2019.
2019. Thank you once again. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to subscribe and review, and follow us on Twitter at Digital Jam Ltd. DigitalJamSessions.com